Most of you know I grew up in Argentina, so the first sport that I ever actually played on a team wasn't football, baseball, wasn't basketball, but soccer. And although I grew up in Argentina, I still had the American genes because I really wasn't any good at it. The first time we had an actual game in practice where we were scrimmaging, I went down to the other end of the field where we were supposed to be scoring, and I stood there. My idea was, I'll just wait until the soccer ball comes this way and I'll kick it into the goal and score, right? I mean, that's how it works. The problem with my thinking was that the ball and all the action that was going on was way behind me, the other end of the field. It doesn't work like that. You can't just walk up there. I'm sitting there talking to the goalie, expecting the ball to come to me, and you have to go for the ball. And we can do the same thing in the church. We can do the same thing by not engaging in the mission, by stepping back from the front lines and getting involved in our stuff. We can be sitting there thinking, yeah, we'll just wait for it to come to us, and when it comes to us, we're just going to kick it in the goal. And it doesn't work that way. Be turning to Matthew 10. In Matthew 10, Jesus is talking to his disciples. We're going to be in verses 16 through 23. In the verses previous to that, his disciples are being sent out on a mission. And if you're a follower of Jesus tonight, then you are, in the same way, sent out on a mission to witness to who Jesus is and what he's done by your life and by your testimony, what you say to other people. So what we're going to find as we study this passage is that Jesus instructed his disciples on how to handle opposition because he knew that being on mission would result in the world hating them. In the same way, if you're a disciple of Jesus, he's telling you the same thing. He has instructions for you in this passage on how to handle opposition because he knows that being on mission with him is going to result in your peers and your family even possibly hating and despising you. You're like, okay, well, that's great. So now we know Jesus is sending us into this mission and we can't back off. We can't step off the front lines like I was trying to do in my little soccer experiment, if you will. We can't do that. We're supposed to go, so what do we get out of it? And we're going to see that in this passage, not only do we have this command to go and how to deal with the opposition that will inevitably come up, but he's also going to give us promises about his presence with us and what he is going to do in our lives. So we don't say from the beginning here, no, that's not for me. I'm not going to. Can't be a part of that because you'd be missing out on what Jesus has for you. So if you've made it there, I'll give you turning pages. So if you've made it to Matthew 10, I'm going to start in verse 16. Jesus says to his disciples, "Behold, I am sending you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of men, for they will deliver you over to the courts and flog you in their synagogues. And you will be dragged before governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them and the Gentiles. When they deliver you over, do not be anxious how you are to speak or what you are to say, for what you are to say will be given to you in that hour. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Brother will deliver brother over to death, and the father his child. And children will rise against parents and have them put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. When they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. For truly I say to you, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes." So he gives us in this passage three, what I think are instructions on how we're to handle opposition. And the first one is very simple. It's implied in what he says in the very beginning. He said we are to embark on God's mission with shrewd innocence. And what I mean by shrewd is simply that you're to be, when he says there that you're to be like a snake, like a serpent, that's not, we don't think of that as a positive thing. Think of it as negative, right? You don't like snakes. Snakes are bad. But we can see in the snake, there are actually some good things. At least in their culture, snakes were thought to be really wise. They were thought to be cunning. And Jesus is saying, I'm sending you out as sheep among wolves. What he was talking about there earlier in Matthew, he talks about the leaders of the Israelites, the people who would put him to death on a cross. He talks about them as wolves. And he talks about false teachers as wolves. They're even in sheep's clothing in Matthew 7. So he's talking about people possibly in the religious community. So in our day, it'd be possibly people that are a part of the church, so to speak. Even those people could be wolves. And what do wolves do to sheep? You kill them. Eat them. So he's saying, I, your shepherd, am sending you out as sheep among wolves, but I know what I'm doing. You need to be, don't just go out. You need to be wise. Because if you're not wise, if they lack that quality of wisdom and thinking through the things that they do, then they're going to get themselves killed for no reason. Right? But if they lack the other quality, he talks about them being innocent as doves, if they lack that other quality, then even if they don't get themselves killed, they're likely not to do things in righteousness. They're likely not to do things the way that Jesus would have had them do it. So you have both of these things. You have to be shrewd like a snake would be, and you need to be innocent as a dove would be, so that when they do arrest you, when they do persecute you, he's telling them here, it won't be for anything you actually did wrong. It'll be for what you're doing in obedience to me. Don't get caught. Don't do stupid, wrong things. Do what I tell you to do, and that'll be enough reason for them to persecute you. So, shrewd innocence. And the great thing about this is, the shrewd innocence, us being in on God's mission, embarking on God's mission, leads to people persecuting us. He says that they'll do it in the synagogues, they'll take you before their governors, they'll take you before all these different people, they'll beat you, they'll flog you. They're going to mess you up. But it's for an opportunity to witness. So in these situations, for you, in your school, in your community, in your family, as people oppose you for doing what you know is right, for obeying Jesus, what he's actually doing is giving you an opportunity. He says to him that you will be dragged before governors and kings for my sake to bear witness before them. Every time someone opposes you for doing what's right, really what you're being given is an opportunity to witness to who Jesus is and what he's commanded you to do. It's a good thing, Jesus is saying. He goes on to say, not only are we to embark in God's mission with shrewd innocence, but we're supposed to engage in his mission with serene confidence. And all serene means, it's just a fancy word that means calm, peaceful. So you engage in God's mission with serene confidence. In other words, it's not the kind of confidence that you see displayed in our professional athletes. I used to I loved watching basketball with my dad, not just because I love basketball, but basically because watching basketball with my dad would always result in him making fun of the guys that got interviewed at the end of the game. Like, they go up to the key guy on each team and they interview him afterwards, and the winning player, the winning team's player always talks about how, well, I just did this, I was on tonight, and my field goal percentage was great. And he talks about all these different things he did. My dad would sit there and mock him like the whole time, like, oh yeah, I've just got broad shoulders, I carry the whole team on my shoulders. Yeah, the whole time. It was hilarious to watch my dad make fun of these guys, because he knew that real confidence isn't like that. Real confidence in something doesn't require for you to boast about it in yourself. The confidence that Jesus is talking about here isn't confidence in our ability to withstand persecution. It isn't confidence in our ability to argue with people when they oppose the gospel. It's confidence in who? It's confidence in the Father. He says, when they deliver you over, do not be anxious how you're to speak or what you're to say, for what you are to say will be given to you in that hour. There's the Father. There's the Spirit of the Father in you, giving you words to say. And notice how he doesn't say if this happens. The reason we need this confidence is because it's not an if question. In verse 19 and in verse 23, 2 times in this passage, he says, when. When they hand you over. When they run you out of town. When they persecute you in one town and you're supposed to flee to the next. When, twice. So it's not an if question. It's a definite thing. You will, if you are following Jesus, obeying him, witnessing to who he is in this world, they will persecute you. They will run you off. It's going to happen. So you need the confidence that God is going to be with you. And that kind of confidence comes from his promise here, not from our ability. Not from, oh, we're so good that when they come to us, we'll have an answer for them. But at the same time, it doesn't mean do not be anxious. There in verse 19, when he says do not be anxious, that doesn't mean do not be prepared. Like some people have a problem with this verse, they come to it, and it's kind of like, okay, so that means that when people come to me and they ask me questions about Jesus and they ask me questions about the Bible, and when they start asking about evolution and whether or not there really is a God, and if Jesus is the only way to the Father, when they start asking me all these questions, God's just going to give me something to say. It's not what Jesus is saying. He says, don't be anxious. He doesn't say, don't be prepared. In fact, you see, if you were to go over, you can write this down and look at it later, but 1 Peter 3:15. Peter is talking to the persecuted church in his day, and he tells them to be prepared, to always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that is in them. In other words, when people have questions for you, always be prepared to give them an answer. In order to do that, you have to know what you believe and why you believe it. It's work. This is where we get this idea here of engaging in the mission. You're not just out there. It's not enough for you to just be out there. Jesus sends us out, like it says in the beginning of the passage, but it's not enough for us to just go out. We have to be ready to actually do the work and tell people. In other words, we have to know our stuff. You need to know why you believe that Jesus is the only way to the Father. You need to know why you believe that everyone needs a Savior, specifically Jesus Christ. You need to be able to answer those questions. So, there's the second one, engage in God's mission with serene confidence. And this last one, and I think this is probably the most important one for us, because I think you guys, at least to some extent, are willing to go out there, willing to be among the people who don't know about Jesus. I don't see many of you as being the kind of people who just, oh, I'm not going to hang out with non-Christians. That's just not cool. I want to be with all my Jesus people. I don't think y'all are like that. And I think you're willing to talk to people who want to talk to you about Jesus. But the last thing here he gives us is that we're to endure in God's mission with singular allegiance. And what I mean by singular allegiance is real simple. Singular means one, right? Allegiance, when you pledge allegiance, you're saying, I'm with, you pledge allegiance to the flag, I'm an American, I'm with my country, I support my country, I'm allied, I'm faithful to my country. Singular allegiance, what we're talking about is to Jesus and Jesus alone. You go back to Matthew 6, and he says, you cannot serve two masters. You can't serve Jesus and money. You can't serve Jesus and anything else in this world. He has to be your sole authority. He has to be at least your overarching authority over everything else. You honor your parents, but as soon as your parents start commanding you to do things that Jesus doesn't, you don't have an obligation then. You can't obey them if they contradict Jesus. Singular allegiance. And the reason I say that is because you're going to be getting opposition from all sides. You're going to be getting opposition from all sides. I was the third of 4 kids, okay? It was my sister was born, then 2 years later my brother, and then 5 years later it was me, and then 6 years later it was my little sister. So my older brother and sister were allies. They were on the same team. They were friends. They did everything together. And when I came along and was little bitty and cute, they were good with me. They'd play. They'd do all this stuff. I have pictures of my older brother letting me sit in his lap. It's amazing. What happened is I started to become a little bit older, and then especially in my preteen years, I became really annoying. And so they both decided they hated me and wanted to have nothing to do with me and would do everything they could to exclude me. And my little sister comes along, and she's no help because I'm 6 years older than her, so we have nothing in common, really, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with me. So I'm in the middle of these two sides and don't really feel like anybody's on my team. If you are following Jesus, in a sense, it's going to seem like nobody's on your team. He says it in this passage. He says, brother will deliver brother over to death, and the father his children, and then children their parents. And not only that, but you'll be hated by all for my name's sake. And while that doesn't mean that everybody's going to hate you, that means that whatever context you go into and share the gospel, there will be people who oppose you and hate you. And all of this, think about it, all of this could be avoided if we would just distance ourselves from Jesus, because he says you'll be hated for my name's sake. They're not going to hate you because of who you are. They're going to hate you because of Jesus and because you're close to him. You could just separate yourself a little bit from Jesus and it'd be over. So you have to decide now, is Jesus worth it? Is he worth all this that's going to happen to you? Because he says to endure, and here's the 3 reasons that I think he gives for enduring. The first one he says is, I think we're supposed to endure for the sake of salvation. He says, and you will be delivered, you'll be hated by all for my name's sake, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. That doesn't mean that what we do saves us. But it does mean that if we are really his, we will endure to the end. So endure for salvation. Endure for the sake of the great work. He says you won't be able to go through, and there in verse 23, through all the towns in Israel by the time I come back. And I think really what he's saying is we won't finish taking the gospel to every Jew on the planet before Jesus comes back. It's a huge mission, much less to every single other person on the planet. We have a great mission that we have been called to be a part of. So we need to endure. We're not going to finish this race if we just try to sprint it out. We'll wear ourselves out in the beginning. We're not singularly allied to Jesus. He's not our goal. And then the last reason is that he's coming back. Endure for the sake of his return. He says the Son of Man is coming again. And Isaiah 40:10 says that he's coming and he's bringing his reward with him. So realize that you have been, as a disciple of Jesus, you've been sent out. You've been sent out as a sheep among wolves to be a part of this mission. And being a part of this mission means opposition. Luckily, Jesus has told us how to deal with opposition. And he's told us ahead of time that people will hate us for being a part of this. And he's told us, he's promised us that he's going to be with us and that he's coming again. And he's going to finish it. And I want to give you one last warning. Not only do you miss out on the reward if you choose to wait for the action to come to you like I did on that soccer field. But the sad part of that story, if you can call it a sad part, kind of a funny story. The sad part of that story is that I didn't go by myself down to the other end of the field. 2 of my teammates followed me. I don't know why they were looking to the American like I knew anything about soccer, but they followed me. And in the same way, if you choose to sit back, there will be people in this room, people in this church, people in your family who will choose to sit back with you. And you will be leading others to miss out on what God has for you. So I don't know what it means for you necessarily. If it means being involved in a small group because small groups are doing ministry in this community, or if it means just that you need to be involved in sharing your faith with people, even when they oppose you in your school and your family. But whatever it is, I pray that you'll see. I pray that you'll see the value of this mission, the value of what Jesus is offering us as a result of it, and that you'll choose to be a part of this mission no matter what it costs.